for so many organizations, you need to diversify your supplier base, but if you don't invest in small businesses, that's going to be hard. So we go back to the square one. So the buy is to build a sustainable supply chain and embed supplier diversity standards by contracting Hispanic-owned businesses. So if you're an organization, the DE&I is to achieve population parity for employer-based businesses. We're going to make our part as Latino organizations to be more visible and better prepared for corporate America to be able to hire from small businesses. You have to do your part by investing in small businesses and investing in these organizations that are here represented so that we can prepare the next generation of suppliers. So pretty much, in a nutshell, this is the content, the summary of the content of the Hispanic Promise 2.0. An example, just like on the pillar of celebrate, there are some activities that you have that you can be doing where you're like good. Okay, so if you do internal communication and you have a sponsor or a mentor for your Latino employees, you're good. The outcomes, like this, what the kind of activities that you could be looking at. You're better if you do internal communications and external communications, and you start looking at, like B2B, but also B2C activities. And best is when you're really investing in the market, when you're internal and external, and you're doing more for the community. So this is pretty much, like in a nutshell. I'm not gonna read you the, like the long Hispanic Promise. I'm sure you're interested, but I'm gonna read you the outcome. Don't ask. So it looks a little bit like this. You're going to be able to put yourselves, like as a company, where are you in the spectrum? Just like, again, the real measurement comes from seat on the index. But I think that if you wanted to know, just like, like that, where are you? You can see yourself in the good and the better and the best in the example of celebrate. So lastly, we're not launching this on its own on a vacuum on the framework. I think that I learned my lesson when seeing actually so many frameworks that have moved the needle so much, like the global goals. It is important to have the resources at the side. So what you're going to be getting resources is to make sure that we're equipping corporate America to deliver. We're going to have a directory of Hispanic organizations, the who is who does what, and where. So that it's easy for you to know who are we, and so that you can actually activate these as if it would be the white pages or the yellow pages. We're going to have an online platform so that companies can actually put their profiles, that Latino organizations can put their profiles, and we can actually start looking at a collaboration internally and externally that actually can you can actually start putting your own commitments about areas where you want to advance. We're going to have capacity building series on each of the pillars. We're not going to let you swim on your own. We're going to be right there saying like, okay, what are the best practices for hire? How can you actually look at best practices on promotion and others? And we're going to provide toolkits, particularly for affinity groups, employee resource groups, and others. The last piece is the ecosystem. It really matters, and I think that I'm really happy to see people like Jake coming from like the global goals perspective. When you have a community, an alliance, and a coalition of people that are pushing in the same direction, it goes so much faster. So we're going to have summits and events, global gatherings like this one that we're doing in Davos. We're going to go to the Canada Festival, the UNGA, and we're going to gather the practitioners so that we can create a community. So with that, I would love to, invite the panel to join us. But to all of you, just like the call to action is very clear. Sign and adopt the Hispanic Promise 2.0. Be a first mover. Take this as a call to action and as a, like a wake-up call. Don't wait until it's a last call where you have to take, how do you say that? Course correction. So thank you so much for allowing me to introduce to the world through this cafe, the Hispanic Promise 2.0. And thank you so much. And if we can have the panel join us. So thank you so much. We're going to have a discussion. Well, it was a mouthful, isn't it? I mean, first of all, can I ask for a big round of appreciation and thank you for Microsoft for hosting us today. I'd like to start this panel so that we can see how does it look like in action and in practice, and how can this be useful? What are the things that you have seen? What are the spaces and priorities on diversity and inclusion? But I would like to start by asking my counterpart, my partner, my role model, Sid Wilson, the president of the Hispanic Association of Corporate Responsibility, to say a couple of words and to react to what we consider our baby, the Hispanic Promise.
Thank you, Claudia. Excuse me, my microphone just almost dropped, so I caught it. Good. Well, first let me start by saying, buenas tardes, mi gente. Buenas tardes. Y buenos días a la gente, in the U.S. So let me just first start by asking you to please give everyone a huge round of applause that Claudia will Claudia and I met in 2018 here in Davos, and she was like, "Pero tú latino, sí, y tú latino, oh my God!" And because when I came here, I saw nobody, and then we stayed in touch during the year, and then that led to the conversations and said, "Let's come back to Davos." And Claudia was the one that came up with the amazing visionary idea to create the Hispanic Promise. And seeing how it was launched in Davos in 2019, and seeing how it has grown with so many companies that have signed on, it is so important. But when you think about the core reason why, I'd like to start by saying this, especially here in Davos, given that there are many people here who are from around the world and maybe some from different countries. If I were to tell your company to invest in a country that had the following dynamics: fifth largest economy in the world, dollar denominated, so you don't have currency risk, AAA rating, so there's no sovereign debt risk, that is English dominant, that's in a strong regulatory environment, so you don't have regulatory risk, that has an average age of 29, that has a low age of 11, that is growing faster than every single G20 country, and even faster than some developing countries. On a risk-adjusted basis, would you take your globalization dollars and invest it in a country like that? I just described to you the U.S. Latino economy. That's not only how strong we are globally. We're larger than the UK, we're larger than France, we're larger than India, we're larger than Brazil, we're larger than Russia. We are the fifth largest. And when you look at all the risks of the globalization that you do in other countries, it is so obvious that you would say, of course we would invest in Latinos. But yet, despite that, as Claudia has shared, we know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. One of the things that we track at HACR, the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility, through our Corporate Inclusion Index, is where are we in terms of boards, in terms of the C-suites and other areas. The fact of the matter is that only 4% of all Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 board seats are held by Latinos. Latinas is less than 1%. Now, we all know that in many households, Latinas are often the ones that make the major decisions in the household. So if you took that $2.8 trillion of Latino GDP, it's probably about 1.9, maybe 2 trillion, maybe 2.1 trillion Latina GDP, which would make Latinas somewhere around the 10th or 11th largest economy in the world. And yet still we only have one Latina who's a Fortune 500 CEO, only 3 Latinas that have ever been a Fortune 500 CEO, and so much to do. So that's why it is so critically important that more companies sign on and stay presente to the Hispanic Promise. And so we look forward to working with all our community partners and making sure that we see that vision when corporate America is truly inclusive of who we are as an economically powerful, globally influential community, the U.S. Latino community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, just want to reiterate my gratefulness and the respect and admiration that I have for you and the partnership we have. Thank you so much. So I'd like to start with the corporate perspective. How is this useful? How, like giving, if you can give your perspective about like how diversity and inclusion plays a role in your growth, in your organization, and how a framework like the Hispanic Promise can help you or has helped you in the years that you have signed. I think that that's going to be a general question for all of you. Intro short and sweet so that people know, like what you do within your corporations. And I'd like to start just like with you, Teresa. Like maybe we can go through that round and then we can go specifically to, like a piece of news that just happened with your Microsoft. Do you mind, Teresa, starting?
Yeah, no, so I'm happy to. So I'm Teresa Hutson. I lead a team called Technology and Corporate Responsibility. But broadly speaking, this is existential. It's built in. Your pillars are so aligned to how we think about this. Build the pipeline, invest in education, invest in HSIs, invest in associations that are finding and building STEM talent, hire, retain, promote, and then use our dollars to, help build the ecosystem because we can do that through our supplier base. So it's absolutely exactly hitting how we think about these things, and we know that there's huge opportunity and it's for our benefit to align to your pillars. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Great, Jamie Moldafsky, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Communications and also oversee our culture work at Nielsen. And I think we were one of the first companies to sign on. Our CEO, David Kennedy, signed on in person, I think, in 2019. And I think from a couple perspectives, but obviously recognizing the importance as a global company to supporting diversity and inclusion and ensuring that we could represent our employees, our clients, and our industry. But really importantly, as a measurement company, we provide the media industry and advertisers with the data and the insights to allow them to do their job better, which is to provide relevant content, to ensure engagement with key communities. And so we serve, I think, a really important role in making sure that that 1 out of 5 Latinos in the US are represented in media, that the insights that come about the community can be represented in the content, in the creation, and in the distribution. And so I think it, again, fully aligns not only with internally for our employees and ensuring that we mirror the community we serve, but also really critical, we have to measure everybody where they are across all devices, 24 hours a day, and the Latino community is a core part of that.
And as a fact, like Microsoft was company number 1, as I promised, because we launched it here. Your company was number 3, and so I hope that I hope that the tools that we're adding, the new iterations, are gonna provide useful for someone that has been in the space for so long. Pilar.
Yeah, well, thank you. My name is Pilar Cruz, and I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Cargill. I consider myself a great example of what is possible in corporate America by being one of the few female leaders that we have in the executive team. The 1% representation of being a member of a public owned company, which is impressive. And I pinch myself every single day thinking about there's so many mentors and sponsors that I've had to me to where I am. From a company perspective, I would say supporting and promoting Hispanic Latinos is not only the right thing to do, it's aligned with our company's purpose, our company's guiding principles, our values, putting people first. And secondly, I would say you talk about the commercial opportunity. 20% of the US population is Hispanic Latino. And over the last 10 years, it's grown by 23%, which is huge. So we constantly think about the customers that we support, the employees that we attract, the suppliers that we work with, and they are expecting us to look like them, to talk like them, to bring the best talent that we can possibly attract in the company in a way that we bring innovation, technology, the best ideas, and that's what is possible when you create an environment that is not only diverse, but inclusive, when we promote Hispanic Latino talent as well.
Thank you, Pilar. Judit.
Thank you so much, everyone, and it's so exciting to be in this room that's filled with so much amazing talent. And I think, as Claudia and Sid have mentioned, this is relatively new, and it's always great to know that it grows. And huge thanks to the World Human Foundation, to leaders like Claudia and Sid, for making this happen. I'm Judit, I'm an Executive Director with APCO Worldwide, a global consulting company where I wear multiple hats, but I think probably the one that I'm most proud of today is of being the co-founder and a co-chair of our Latin APCO ERG. But in addition to that, also relevant to the conversation, I co-lead our Gender Center of Excellence. For us, inclusion was a no-brainer. I think it's any company that is not recognizing that you need to both add value to society, add value to your employees, but also be attractive to future talent is on the way down. If you look at ESG frameworks, we look at it within the ESG frameworks that we, as metrics that we have to meet, but also in the context of being a professional services firm, the advice that we give and the counsel we give to companies, non-profits and also governmental entities about how they need to be considering not just the current cultural mix of the US, but the future one, and the interconnectivity that exists. If you are a company doing business in Spain and Latin America, people will most likely look towards what you're doing in your own market and how you're dealing with Hispanics. The framework that Claudia outlined has been absolutely inspirational, but has also provided a framework that has allowed us to shape our interactions, how we have organized our internal working groups, and how we look at what we do both internally and externally as well. And interestingly, we sign, all employees when they join the company are invited to sign what we call the Inclusivity Pledge. And the Inclusivity Pledge that we have includes a reference to the Hispanic Promise. So I love the fact that we are actually mainstreaming this into other broader perspectives.
Well, that's fantastic. And honestly, if a company like APCO can find the Hispanic Promise useful as a tool to your clients, and you start recommending it, this is when you start seeing change happen. I think that a couple of companies here in that space, and it's so much so that we're gonna have in the 50 years of the existence of the World Economic Forum, there's never been a session on Hispanics, despite being such a big economy. But tomorrow we're going to have the first ever press conference on Hispanics launching the Hispanic Promise. So let's talk about your individual companies, your efforts, your strategies, your struggles, your dream, your wish list, and everything that you would like to see in this space going, understanding that it's a journey, not a destination. No one from us is gonna come and finger point. We're gonna work on with you guys, but it would be great to start. But Teresa, I do want to start with acknowledging a piece of news just hit about Microsoft, Microsoft having some layoffs, and how you said that that's why it's even more important to take action in this space. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I mean, we have lots of levers we can pull to make progress. I mean, first you have to set some sort of aspirational goals for progress you want to meet. We've done that. You have to hold yourself accountable. We've done that. We have to report on it. We've done that. This becomes even more important though, because it can be easy to say, oh gosh, we're in tough economic times. We can't keep focusing on that. We have to keep focusing on it. It just means we'll have a little less opportunity to hire. So then you just shift your focus a bit to thinking about retention, to thinking about development, to thinking about promotion. We've said that we're going to double the number of Latinos in our leadership positions by 2025. We have to keep doing that. We can't say we're not going to do that just because we're in tougher economic times. It becomes more important than ever, especially because hopefully we'll come out of tough economic times and we need to continue to have credibility because we want people to join us and stay with us. We want it to be, so it's incredibly important, and even more important and on a hard day where we announce, that we're laying off 10,000 people. So, I would just say that to anybody who's kind of in those hard economic times, you can't lose focus on this, because that's where you lose all forward momentum and credibility, and the credibility really matters when you come out of those hard times.
And I want to make sure that we hear that message loud and clear. Within the context of recession and inflation, I think that communities like the Latino, you can't go backpedal. You have to actually double down. And it's great to hear that companies are understanding this and not backing off, having a commitment in public, having a commitment of actually staying put. And for everyone that is new to this, Latinos means growth and secular growth. So don't back up, double down on Latinos, even if you're scared of a recession. So.
Well, I'll share a couple things. I think one thing that worked very well, which is probably a little bit unique at Nielsen, is our our CEO, David Kenny, actually took on the position of Chief Diversity Officer when he joined the company. It was right after he actually signed on the promise. And I think he took it on for a couple of reasons. I think one is he really did feel that his influence was necessary to make the change happen, right? If he was the number one person leading the company, he had to lead the company, especially around diversity internally and inclusion. But the second was around culture, which was to create a culture that was genuinely about valuing every individual of the company and allowing them to succeed. And so his taking on that role, it wasn't just symbolic, it was actually I would say it was the cement of the culture, right? It created a very strong culture for the company in really believing from the top down that diversity and inclusion is a core tenet of how we operate. And he did transition that role to another Chief Diversity Officer, Sanderson Williams, but it really did, I think, create momentum in the organization over the last couple of years. And so I share that because I think it is a best practice. I think it's very unusual to have a CEO who takes on that title, but I think because of that, I think the organization views diversity and inclusion not as something optional, not as a side gig that we all have to do, not a set of statistics that we're going to look at periodically and see if we're on track, but actually an accountability to each other, and an accountability that's as important as the financial accountability. So that's one thing. And then the other I would just say is a really strong commitment internally to developing talent. I think you talked well about that. We also have had to do some layoffs, and it's very painful, but I think being very conscious about how we continue to develop, mentor, coach, and invest in particularly Hispanic talent, but all of our diverse employees to make sure that they have that opportunity and that they aren't disparately impacted negatively in an environment like this. So I think it was a great point. I'll just reinforce that.
And we're very grateful because one of the most respected Latino leaders that we have works with you, Stacey Darmas, that we all hire. We learned so much from her. So great. And it's super important not only in the economic crisis, but also we know with so much emphasis on the E of the ESG, the S could be at risk, so it's time actually to just make sure that we understand that equation is at risk.
Yeah, I mean, for Cargill, we are a privately held family-owned company. We have been in business for 158 years, and we have a very strong presence in Latin America. So for us, thinking about the Hispanic Latino population is not something new. Again, it's part of our culture, it's part of our strategy. We have a clear DE&I strategy for which Hispanic Latino is a core element and a component of the focus that we are giving from a DE&I perspective. But I would say, in addition to the strategy, we have clear metrics and we are making significant investments, not only from a policy perspective to ensure that we are more inclusive, that we provide Hispanic Latinos with opportunities. The size of our company, we are private, but we are a Fortune 18, Fortune 20 type of company, and I report to the CEO, the only or the first Hispanic Latina that joined the executive team, and that is huge. The next level down, and I was doing the math with Teresa, who is here from Cargill, the next level down, we have 15 group leaders who lead global businesses for Cargill, and we counted the numbers today, and we have 40% of those 15 who are Latinos. From Brazil, from Chile, from Ecuador, and of course from Colombia. So it makes me really proud that it's not just about the commitment, the strategy, and the metrics, but it's also the outcome and the actual numbers that we are delivering today because we are making a difference. Maybe the last thing that I would say, Claudia, is it's not just about the Hispanic Latino population in the US, but we are very focused on the efforts around Latin America. And we are a proud sponsor and partner of the Partnership for Central America, which is Vice President Kamala Harris' very strong effort around investing in Central America. And we have committed $160 million for us to invest in farmers and communities, in schools, in education and nutrition, in a way that we are promoting the livelihoods of people in countries such as Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. So again, it's not the strategy, the metrics, but it's also the numbers. And it's also the investments that we are making to support the Latino population in the US and outside of the US.
Amazing, congratulations again. And I learned actually from your CEO, the first panel we had, he was here, the importance of having allies, not only the leadership down, but also allies. And I do want to recognize that in this panel, we have two incredible allies. That in the audience was Kerry Kennedy, the former Prime Minister of Denmark, Helle Thorning-Schmidt, that are here, a number of allies and people that care, that are showing up. And I do think that that's what, when you start having frameworks, champions, and then allies, and you know, like a commitment to achieving a goal. I think that this is when we can get all optimistic about change being possible.
So for APCO, the Hispanic Promise was something that was a no-brainer. It was probably one of the fastest things I've had approved. It really went through very, very quickly because it just made sense. There was no reason not to sign it. There was nothing that wasn't sensible and that wasn't going to further the inclusion of Latinos in our company. But I think what struck me as a company in the professional services and reputation realm was that when the tragic death of George Floyd occurred, a lot of companies had to scramble because they needed to figure out what their framework for dealing with racial justice and racial equity issues was going to be. The Hispanic Star was already something that we had been implementing beforehand, so it really provided a very good solid basis on which we built and added additional things. Similarly to what has been mentioned before, I run our Latin America business, and I never cease to be amazed when interviewing candidates, particularly at the more senior level, how much they actually reference the Hispanic Star as something that makes us attractive as a potential employer, and how much that notion of being reflected is also important. In the same vein, I am also the first Latina to take up an executive director position at APCO. And I see my role as making sure that I'm bringing others along and making sure that I'm helping others climb up that ladder and have the range of opportunity. And I think in today's day, we all battled, I think the situation is a little bit different, but we all battled for talent. And regardless of where the economy goes, we're still going to want to get and recruit and keep the best talent. And this is a critical element in that toolkit of how we can do so.
Yeah, amazing. If you don't mind, Judit's CEO is a case that we're seeing, and I think that I learned that from Patricia, how much of a trend towards Latinidad there is. We used to hide ourselves, and 76% of Hispanics actually hide who they are when they come to work. So if you're Jorge, you pretend to be George when you're at work, because it's easier and faster for you to have a promotion. But that's changing, and more and more people are taking off their mask and accepting their Latinidad and accepting their language and their accents. And I think that there's in this fluid world, Gen Zs and millennials are helping us to do that. And I see a number of leaders that all of a sudden, like the CEO of APCO, that all of a sudden say like, wait, I've never said in public that I am a Hispanic, and I'm gonna start looking at those places to recognize that. So to close, I would like to ask everyone in the panel to close with Sid, if you don't mind, to give your final words, final message. We're filming this so that it doesn't actually only is broadcasted to the people that are hearing Davos, but to the 62 million Latinos that are watching us and that are paying attention because they want to see change happen for them in their pay, in their, in their valuation, and how are they going to look for the choices where they're making. And again, I do want to, just before we go, recognize how Prime Minister Hele was our co-chair this year for the Latina Equal Pay Day. She flew all the way from Denmark to be with our hero, Dolores Huerta, advocating and sharing best practices for us to be able to achieve or improve our equal pay, and allyship goes all the way through from, my honorable husband, Richard, has been there from the very beginning, the chief economist, Jennifer Blanque, Jake. I can name a number of allies that are here, but I do want to recognize and give you a double shout out. So if you don't mind, let's go into a final round, final message, final words.
Yeah, so I would say two things. One, really important to keep focused on the workplace and talent. And it's really important to think about where the business can sort of drive progress. So whether that's procurement dollars or solving specific challenges or problems, use the business you have to solve those problems. One of the things we're seeing is really increased consumption of Russian propaganda amongst Spanish-speaking people. And so we're really thinking about how do we use what we have to address that problem. So I would just say, kind of a call to action, do that too. Look at the problems and apply the business you have, apply your dollars, and keep going on the employment side. It's all a part of this virtuous cycle. We have to do it all.
Great, and I would say maybe two pieces also. The first, really focus on the consumer and the audience and the importance of understanding the community. And I think that, for us, one of the key data points is that the average Latino is 34 years old, right? There's over 60% of them. And so that is a key demographic for the media industry, and it should be for all of our industries, by the way. And so really understanding those cultural differences, making sure that the people we serve, the media industry, the advertising industry, understand that and can actually make themselves more relevant to that audience is really critical. And then the second is, I think we talked about talent, and I'm really excited that we have a new Chief Revenue Officer, Amilcar Perez. He's wonderful. He will be leading us, and I think really importantly, will open up a lot of opportunity for us internally to really do more externally. And so I think the marriage, again, of that external internal piece is really important, and I don't think one without the other actually can work.
Yeah.
So a couple of things as well, and I try to bring a different angle here. I would say we gotta be absolutely proud of being Hispanic Latinos. Maybe just a brief story that I have of an experience that I personally had 18 years ago when I moved to Minnesota, started working for Cargill, very junior in the company, and I went to my husband one day, he was a great sponsor and a great partner for me, and I said, hey, I found this really good class at the University of Minnesota. It is called Accent Reduction for Hispanic Latino people, and I think that's gonna really help me, it's gonna be great for me. And he looked at me, and the conversation lasted 10 seconds. And he said, why are you gonna do that? You are a Hispanic Latino, your accent is beautiful, don't lose that, that's who you are. And I learned that day that that's something that all of us have to be very, very proud of. So let's show that with pride and excitement because it makes us who we are. And the second thing I would say, promoting Hispanic Latino diversity and inclusion should not be a new program or a project or the flavor of the month. It should be part of your company's purpose, your company's strategy, and how you run your business. I think it is important that it's led from the top down and that we act, not just make promises and commitments. Continue supporting Claudia. I think you do an amazing job and we'll continue supporting you for sure for everything you do. But let's also make sure that it's about the investments, the numbers, the people that we are promoting and supporting, and it takes all of us to make a difference.
Super, thank you so much.
As a consultant, I think in decks. So think of this as a PowerPoint slide. At the center, you have us as a company. For me, the key priority really is building on what has been said. How do you create an environment that enables everyone to fully be able to show up and show up in the multitude of identities that they have and don't feel they have to have it? There are vulnerable moments, there are others that are easier, but just how do you show up and how do you create that culture? The next one is, as a professional services firm in that next circle, what is that role that you play? Teresa mentioned the challenge around disinformation, misinformation to the Hispanic community. Huge. As someone that works in the public affairs and comms era, that is something that we focus on, making sure that whenever we talk about it, we remind people that there's a dimension around the Latino audience that needs to be addressed. When you're talking about gender equality, reminding people that Latinas are actually some of the ones that suffer the most. Women are already disadvantaged. The COVID pandemic has had a huge impact and it's getting worse. So how do we progress and correct and get us back on track to make sure that we're doing that? And I think within that kind of bigger kind of policy arena, I'm going to challenge Claudia's little slide about the SDGs because I think there's a core SDG that wasn't highlighted, and that's SDG 16. Because at the core of this, we're also talking about justice, and we're talking about the broader framework of equality. So unless every single Latino in the US, their families outside of the US, are able to fully express themselves and fully be respected, and their diversity and the differences that they bring about values, we really aren't talking about equality. So I think bringing that framework, whether you want to talk about it under the S or the G of ESG, under the SDGs, whichever framework makes you happier. And I love what you're doing on Hispanic Promise 2.0, so I think that that's going to be a great metric and a great extra point to beat.
Well, let me first, as we conclude, is that this is not rocket science.
we don't need a NASA, I love NASA, by the way. But we don't need a NASA scientific report to know what we know already. The fact is that more companies should be signing the Hispanic Promise. Quite frankly, even if you're not US based, you should be signing it. And the reason why is because even if you're a global company, your company is still dependent on us because we are such a strong global economy. And one thing that I want to make sure that every company recognizes, and especially as we're doing this in Davos and talking to so many different companies, is that when I get these comments of, well, we're having a hard time finding employees who are, two words I hear, a fit or qualifications. I hear that more than anything else. And so I said, well, what do you define as that? Because if you're defining that from an assimilation construct, you're always going to say that you can't find enough. And so the key theme here is, remember, it's acculturation, not assimilation. It should be acculturating to our growing Latino economy, to our growing Latino community, not asking us, who's now 20% of the population, 12 to 13% of the US GDP, to assimilate to a construct that has been around for 100, 150 years. And so, so that's part of those evolutions. And then secondly, is that, remember when we talked about, as we expressed the importance of Hispanic Promise, and the bold move to announce this here at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Remember that it's not just diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a third one, a fourth one, it's called intentionality. Because if you think about the math and take diversity times equity times inclusion and put a value to it, and then you put a 0 next to intentionality. For all the mathematicians in here, what is anything times 0?
0.
So that's why we know that it's not just saying that we understand and we agree. Take the action, sign the pledge, and make sure that you are intentional in how you hire, promote, retain, celebrate, and making sure that that we recognize that we are not just a U.S. economic force, we are a global economic force. And recognize that for those companies that don't do it, the reality is at some point, your competitors will. And we are a brand loyal community. And so you want to catch us now while we're young, we're only 29 years of age on average. And so once you got us now, you got us for life. So think about that as you're thinking about your strategic plan in terms of how to grow your business. And even with this talk of a recession, the reality is in the last 20 years, the community that has gotten us out of every recession has been the US Latino community. So if you want to have a strong economic strategy in a potential recessionary environment, you cannot do that without a US Hispanic strategy. So sign the Hispanic Promise, and a big thank you to Claudia for her vision, and so proud of her leadership and her hard work, and everyone within We Are Human. HACR, the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility, is such a proud partner in this movement, and we have so much more to go, and so many other organizations that have said aquí in Davos. Thank you.
Yes. This was incredible. Again, thank you so much for the dear panel. I would like to recognize the Hispanic delegation and Latinos that are in the room. Andres Russo, Maria Cuba, stand up please so that you can see you. Beatriz Acevedo, Rocio, Patricia Roca. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is a Hispanic delegation coming to Davos because we want to set the agenda. We want to bring this agenda of growth to the World Economic Forum. And if we're not part of the table, we will bring our own table. So welcome them. Welcome them. I want to give the last thank you to Teresa and to Microsoft for hosting us today and for the greatness of keeping us. So if you work in a company that has not signed the Hispanic Promise, go sign the Hispanic Promise. If you have clients that need to know about this, go share it, because I think that this is the way we're going to advance our agenda for growth through diversity and inclusion. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.